These are the reports of Russian soldiers. They were found by the Ukrainian military in a liberated village. The documents contain refusals to go to war in Ukraine. By the way, none of these reports were signed by the command.
Commander of the 3rd Motorized Rifle Squad, 1st Motorized Rifle Platoon, 1st Motorized Rifle Company, Motorized Rifle Battalion, I refuse to participate further in the operation. I refuse to perform the combat mission. I refuse the terms of the contract. I refuse to follow the orders of commanders and officers.
The Kremlin has doubled its coward mobilization because of the rapid exhaustion of human resources in the Russian army, the American Institute for the Study of War stated. According to preliminary data, 44 Russian regions have already created volunteer battalions and are recruiting volunteers. A few days ago, head of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, announced in his Telegram channel about the so-called self-mobilization. He urged the Russian governors not to wait when the Kremlin will declare martial law, but to prepare, train and staff at least 1,000 volunteers now.
Kadyrov has obviously been ordered at the regional level to form these battalions of 1,000 men each to influence this. They are supposed to form into the new corps of the army, and the estimate is in the tens of thousands. I don't think that this calculation will be justified.
Russia is trying to replenish its losses at the front by mobilizing in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Dozens of people there are taken by force to the military registration and enlistment office every day. Without training, they are sent straight to the front, because there are less and less people in Russia who are ready to give their lives for the coffin money.
A significant number of people are not interested in participating in the war, to die for the unclear interests of the Kremlin. In this sense, it is indicative that even recruiting contract servicemen for the war with the promise of payment does not give the necessary result of recruiting manpower.
The idea of the Kremlin to recruit new troops for the Russian army in penal colonies caused a scandal in Western press. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the creator of the famous Wagner private military company, is controlling the process. A video has appeared on the internet where he personally recruits prisoners convicted of serious crimes to go to war in Ukraine. Prisoners are promised to be provided with ammunition and paid 100,000 rubles. And those who survive after 6 months of service will be pardoned.
The resource of the penitentiary system in Russia is huge. We are talking about more than 400,000 prisoners. They could be used as cannon fodder, as well as for manpower, and thereby replenish the Russian troops.
Human rights activists report that 10,000 Russian prisoners have already been recruited since the beginning of the summer.
And you know, they very often seek death because life in a Russian prison is so horrible. Horrible not because it's cold and hungry, but because it's humiliating and it's often torture conditions, which are the genius of Putin. Thus, he is eliminating an unnecessary part of the population, which only takes time and trouble for the police and the prosecutor's office.
However, most Russian citizens are not ready to go and die in Ukraine. The Kremlin is aware of this, that is why it is not rushing to start general mobilization, fearing public outrage, experts say.
How these mobilized people will act, whether they will turn out to be deserters or will take and use weapons not against Ukraine, but God knows how they will deal with their commanders. This is a risk. The Kremlin knows all this and will try to avoid to the last moment using this measure, since there is no guarantee that it will produce the desired result. But it is not zero probability, because the situation in the Kremlin could be quite desperate.
To avoid conscription in Russia, human rights activists advise to change phone numbers and place of residence. There are also other ways.
In order to refuse to be drafted and to avoid military service, the citizens of Russia have a wonderful tool – alternative civilian service. The law has been in force for 20 years, and the service is performed only in civil organizations, and contract servicemen can simply refuse military service, cancelling the contract on grounds of anti-war convictions.
Human rights activists consider leaving Russia to be the most appropriate way to avoid being shot. Reported by Roman Smoler, Vlada Tsurkan, UATV News.